Welcome to 8-Bit Resurgence. In this video today we're going to be covering the installation of the Phantom. That was a board that was created by Trilogic back in around 1987 for a very short period of time. I reproduced that board, reverse engineered an original, probably one of the only remaining original boards known to exist. And then I created this board from that. This video will cover the installation of that board in a 1541. Originally I had planned on covering more information about the Phantom before I went into an installation guide, but at this point I think I really need an installation guide for those people that will be soon receiving their Phantom boards. The Phantom can be a little bit tricky to install. It has many connection points that connect it to the 1541 logic board, and as a result, if you don't do it right, you can cause permanent damage to the Phantom board. You won't damage the 1541, but the important part is that Phantom board, because you know, it costs a bit of money and you don't want to break something that you just bought. It can be difficult if you don't know what you're doing, if you've never put one in, but I recreated it and I've installed many of them, and through trial and error I've come up with a very straightforward and foolproof installation method. So that's what I'll be showing you today. In later videos I do plan on covering a bit of the history of where it came from and how I recreated the board, as well as some of its performance figures. This board is blazing fast. There is no speed up board or software that is faster than this. So it's quite an exciting piece of hardware, and I'm happy that I was able to recreate it and had that opportunity, and now I'm pleased that I'll be able to show you how to install one of these. So let's get started. Here you can see the board that we're going to put into this machine, and the machine that we're going to put it into is this one here. So you can see I've already removed the 6522 and the 6510, and those are these two chips here. So they're all ready to go onto the Phantom. One thing you'll notice is that on the back of the Phantom, I'll just flip it over here and pan over. What I've included with it are some machine sockets, and those machine sockets are on the pins that are soldered to the board. There are a couple of purposes as to why I do that. The first purpose is that the pins are very fragile. I can't express enough how easy it is to damage them. That having been said, that's why I put these machine sockets on there. It stabilizes them and keeps them from being damaged. If you were to accidentally drop and bend the pins on these machine sockets, then the machine socket is easy to replace. If you bend those little pins that are sticking through the board, if you bend them severely, when you try to straighten them up, they'll break off, and then you have a huge problem where you'll probably have to send the board back to me if you're not adept at soldering, and it's going to be a service job to replace that pin header, and it's very finicky work. The board is assembled in a certain progression of parts that go on, and once they're on, they're very difficult to remove. So please, let's avoid that, and let's be very careful with those. Now if you look at the 1541 that I'm using for testing purposes, you'll see that I'm not using those machine sockets. I'm using double wipe sockets, and I do that for a couple reasons. I find it's easier for me to repeatedly remove and install. I'm very good at removing the machine sockets off the underside of the board, and I'm also very capable of repairing the board if I bend it or break the pins. I have done that in the past, very early on in my reproduction process. So just use the sockets that are on there, and when you remove the 6522 and 6502 off the board, just use the machine sockets that are on the bottom of the Phantom. Okay, the sync cable in your package, you'll also notice that they're clips, they're IC clips, and they attach to these 3 points here. I'm not a fan of the IC clips, and I'm again also handy with the iron, and I don't have any problem soldering them on. So that's what I've done. Oops, I hate when things go out of focus. Alright, so there you can see pin 1, 2, and 3. Those are the locations where they'll attach. It's more reliable if you do solder them on. The manual on the GitHub also discusses the pin locations, and if you look at the underside of the board, let's see if this will focus on here. You can see a little tiny script there beside that 3-pin header, and if you get a magnifying glass, if your eyes aren't that great or you're old, then you can see it says what pin and what chip each of those are supposed to connect to. Alright, so the next step we're going to do is we're going to install the 6522 and the 6502 onto the Phantom board. Okay, we've moved over to working on top of the 64, probably not the most ideal, but this is how I'm testing all of the boards that I've produced thus far. So if you notice, we now have 3 chips, and we also have 3 sockets here. We have the 6502, which is marked on the board, the 6522, which is also marked on the board, and another 6522. The Phantom actually adds an additional 6522 to the 1541 for all of the magic that it does. So when you install one of these, you pull this chip and this chip off the board, the 6502 and the 6522, but you still have to have one more 6522. I use this chip. Yep, where am I in the camera? Okay, it's a modern Western Digital replacement, 100% compatible with the Commodore. It's a brand new chip. It's offered as an option with the Phantom, and every board that I test with its very own new Western Digital 6522 equivalent chip in it, but that's optional. That's not included in the base price of the Phantom. Some people have spare 6522s kicking around, and that's fine to use, provided they're working okay. They can be had from 1541s that don't work anymore. Maybe it still has a working 6522, but if you have one, go ahead and try it. I'm not going to guarantee that it's going to work. Maybe it's dead. If you haven't tested it, who knows. But if you want one that has been tested with the board that you're buying, then you can add that to the item when you're buying it. So we're going to put these 3 chips on the board now. Okay, so I start with this one. Just put it in, pop that on. So that's on. the other 6522 from the 1541. That's in, and the 6502. There we go. So they're all installed on the board now, and this board is ready to install if you had this at home and at your desk or bench, wherever you're installing it. You would have removed, of course, these ones from your 1541, and earlier in the video you saw where the cables had been removed from the side of the drive. So when we're installing it, it's going to be a little bit jittery because I want to hand hold the camcorder that I'm using to try to get a really close picture of the process that I use in installing it. And installing it can be tricky if you've never done it before, and I'd hazard to say that nobody has done this before. Not that's buying one of these things, that's for sure. And whoever did install one is very, very old by now. So I'll cut here, and then I'll continue on with the installation and show you how you align everything so that you'll get a successful and positive connection of the Phantom to the 1541. Well, one other thing I think I'll do before I jump over there is I'm going to pop off these machine sockets in case you're curious and you'd like to see what it looks like and how you get those off without damaging the pin. So I use a popsicle stick to pry against so I don't damage the traces. I use a flathead, and then I just lift up on the one side a little bit, and then I go to the other side and I lift that up a little bit, and then I just work my way back and forth very gently, and you can feel when it lets go of the pins, and then it's off. So this is how I install, like I mentioned before, not the recommended way because of the delicacy of these little pins, but if you are careful and you do have electronics experience and so forth, and you feel comfortable, you can use double wipe sockets. If you don't like these machine sockets, that's fine as well. So this is one extra step that I'm doing right now that you won't need to do if you're just leaving the machine pin sockets in place on the back side of the Phantom. Alright, now we're going to place the Phantom onto the 1541. And to do that, you want to make sure that you have plenty of light. I usually use a flashlight to help shine underneath once I've placed it, and I'm in a fairly well lit area anyway. So I'm going to start by placing the board, not pushing it down, just placing it, just eyeballing it, so that the machine pins, or the machine pins of your sockets, sit in the sockets here. And you'll notice that what I mentioned earlier is these connectors, this one onto P6, this onto P5, this one on P4, and the sync cable that we added earlier, all will need to connect to the Phantom as well. So they've been removed, and the Phantom will actually connect into here. It'll connect to this pin head, these pins, these, and these, all these. And everything on the board is very precisely designed to line up with that. So that's what you're going to be looking for when you're installing it. When you first place it down, without putting any pressure or trying to seat anything, you're just letting gravity hold it in place. And then you're going to look at all of those connection points to make sure that the pins are in the locations where they're supposed to be, and that being in here, in there, there, and that these pins connect are sitting in that in their respective sockets. All right, so let's see if I can do it. My hands are a little shaky, they always are. So I'm going to place it down, and again, this is going to be hard to film. Okay, so I think I got it in the right place. I'm not shining my light. Now I am. So now you can, I think you can see, I hope you can see those pins are sitting in the socket. I'm going to try to get in from a different angle. I know this is a bit of a strange video, but I'm doing my best to try to show you the connection. So here you can see the pins are just sitting in the socket where eventually I will press it down. And have a good look, put on some glasses if you need to, and make sure that they look like when you apply pressure to the top of the board, when it comes that time, that they are going into the socket. Because if they're beside the socket or they're not lined up, when you push down you'll break or bend the pins, and you do not want to do that. Alright, so that looks aligned. Now we're going to look at the other side. And the other side connects to those pin headers, the long one and the two short ones. These little wires are kind of in the way where you're going to look at. So there it looks pretty good. It looks like, and you can rock it with your hand on top of the board. You can rock it a little bit. Don't put a lot of pressure on it, just to kind of seat it in there. If you look here, you can see the far one, the far 3 pin, the middle 3 pin, and then the long one all appears to be nicely seated in their respective holes. And we'll double check one more time to make sure that the machine pins there are going into the socket. Alright, so now is the moment of truth. We're going to push this board down. Now we've made sure that we've aligned, this side is all nicely aligned on those pins, and the socket is nicely aligned with the machine pins or the machine socket underneath your Phantom. So now it's a matter of just pressing the board into place. So how you do that is, well, I think I'm going to put this on the stand so I can make sure I have my eyes and I can look at it closer. I'll make sure everything is right and show you exactly how I do that. So, alright, so we're going to set this this board into the 1541 logic board. So I've double checked, looking with the flashlight to make sure everything looks okay and there's nothing in the way. Those little, that's out of the way, that's out of the way. So now you put your hand on it and you apply some pressure on the back, on this edge, to kind of force that down onto the pin header, but not all the way, part way. And then you apply the pressure over to this side, which I just did. And you just use a flat hand to do that. And now this is properly seated. It doesn't really take a lot of pressure, but you just have to make sure that everything is lined up, and that is absolutely key. Because if everything isn't lined up, you're going to have a lot of trouble. but it's very easy to make sure that everything is lined up. So there are only a couple last things that you have to do to get your Phantom installed and up and running. So I will show you how to do the last bits now. Alright, so we have a few wires to connect here. We have the sync wire, which connects back here to this 3-pin header. So when you're pushing them back on, when you're pushing them on, just put your thumb on top of the board as you're pushing it on, and just push it in. Okay, the next one is the LED, and that plugs onto this 3-pin header, and you just push it on. And the last two are the drive mechanism. Okay, and that goes onto the last 3-pin. And I'll adjust the camera so you can see the rest of it. And this long one plugs on to this pin header here. So now the drive is all connected and it is equipped with a Phantom. Now there's one other thing that has to be connected in order to achieve the crazy speeds that you will see with the Phantom, and that's the parallel cable. So I'll show you how that's done. At the back of the board, beside the SRAM chip, is a 14-pin socket. That is where you're going to plug your parallel cable in. So once you've gotten the parallel cable, the user port connector that connects this cable to the 1541, of course, plugs into the user port, and it goes. The orientation is the word Phantom goes to the top. So, and then this cable plugs into the socket right here. So it is a very tight fit, and it's like that because that's the way it was originally designed. I didn't change anything about the Phantom. The way you're looking at your Phantom now is exactly trace for trace identical to the original, and the original was this tight as well, but it fits. So when you put this this connector on, you just get a little bit more light here. You set the pins in and make sure it's slid over all the way that way to the left side when it's in the socket, and that'll give it a little bit of extra room to clear the SRAM chip. You know, if you slide it too far to that way, to that way, it'll hit the SRAM. So move it this way in the socket. So put it in the socket and slide it to the as far left as you can within the socket and press down, and that's it. You'll see that the cable is plugged in and it comes out the back, and then you can route that cable out the back of the 1541 wherever it's convenient. I usually bring it out down here, out where the power connector comes out, but whatever is convenient for you, however you want to do it is fine, just so long as you can get it out without crimping and pinching or damaging the ribbon cable. Alright, the moment of truth now. I've repositioned the camera so you can see the behavior of a Phantom, and if we've installed it correctly, which I think we have, and I did a good job building it, which I think I did, it should power on. So what will happen is the drive light will come on and go off fairly quickly, and that's usually a good sign. So let's switch it on. Yeah, okay, that did exactly what it's supposed to do. It just comes on and goes off, kind of like a 1541 usually does. Okay, so the 1541 with the Phantom installed is switched on like we just did, and I have the kernel ROM which is installed, and I guess I should have shown you that first, but I can show you that after. It's pretty simple. What I want to do is I'll switch the 64 on. You'll see what happens when the Phantom kernel is activated and the machine comes on. So here you see the Phantom screen. It's gray on gray with yellow writing. If you press the @ sign and you press enter, that's what you should see. It's the Phantom drive board that we just installed, reporting that it's seen by the 1541 and everything's okay. So let's do a directory, and how I'll be able to tell if the Phantom is working properly is the speed at which the directory is displayed on the screen. It displays it very quickly when it's working. If you don't have the parallel cable connected, or it's not connected properly, then it won't load at the kind of Phantom speeds that you should be seeing. So let's do a directory, just kind of like Jiffy DOS, same idea. So you can see how fast that loaded. Now this is Dr. Doo's Castle is what we're going to try loading, because it's a big one. Normally that would take a long time, probably by today's standards forever, to load. So let's try loading that and let's see how fast it loads, a couple hundred blocks. I'm going to just use a shortcut and the F3 key beside whatever file you want to load. Will load it. But there's a manual on the GitHub that I've created that will give you some of the commands that you can use with this Phantom. So let's see how fast it loads. And that's it. So pretty quickly, I'm going to do that again, and I'm going to focus on the drive head so you can see how fast the head moves. But this is a properly installed Phantom, and how you go about doing it. I don't want to hear anybody bending pins because they don't know how to do it. Please do watch the video, watch it many times if you need to, and ask questions if you are at all nervous about how to install it, or if there's something that you're not sure of. You can reach me through the site, and I respond quite quickly. Okay, so let's watch it one more time. We'll watch the drive head, and we'll see how fast that tracks when loading it through the Phantom. Alright, so let's we'll do a directory, and then we'll I can't see the screen right now, but I can, and we're going to load Dr. Doo's Castle now. That's it. It's loaded. So I see it moves the head very quickly, transfers the data very fast. And that's a working Phantom. And as promised, there's one piece that of course has to happen before all this will work, and that's the Phantom drive ROM, the kernel, sorry. That needs to be installed, so you have to have a socketed kernel in your 64, and if you don't, well, then you have some work ahead of you, because you have to either remove the chip yourself and put a socket in, or ask a friend. But once you have a socket, then it's as simple as removing the kernel that's there and installing the Phantom kernel that came with your package. You won't be getting the one that has Jiffy DOS. That's a custom one that I did because I had Jiffy DOS in this, and I decided, well, I wanted to be able to switch between the Phantom and Jiffy DOS, so I made a custom one of those. But because Jim Brain has an arrangement, whatever, and he sells them. I'm not going to offer that, so please don't ask me for it. If you did, I suppose I could do it for you if you really wanted to, but you would have to purchase a Jiffy DOS from Jim Drew before I could provide this for you in this configuration. Normally the Phantom chip, the version 1.07 of the Phantom kernel comes with just the stock Commodore 64 kernel on the other half. So that's what you're going to get. So anyway, this is an installation video, I suppose, of sorts, of the Phantom, and I hope this helps everybody out in installing their Phantoms. And if you discover some commands that aren't in the manual, please do share them with the community. Send it to me and I'll add it to the user guide. But otherwise, enjoy, have fun with it. Any questions, contact me. Thanks.